go and tune into the YouTube channel and see if I launched it and I want to see if it's actually live and can be heard. Okay, go online. I'm going to start talking right now. All right. So here's what's going on today. So anyway, I don't know exactly if everything's live right now. So I'm going to do a test run. I got Jack on the other end. Gonna probably get started here in just a little bit. Kind of want to introduce you to the program a little bit and just, kind of do what we do around here, and that's kind of just go live. What do? We call it open mic, and so I kind of doing the open mic deal, and anybody can just open. The goal is here. We're gonna find out what the sound is like. Hold on one second. This is how we do things here when you're a rookie. How's the sound? Okay, perfect. Okay, got it. All right, cool. I'm just gonna let it rip then. All right. Okay, cool. Bye. All right. Yeah. So mic's open, and I guess the sound's going good. So welcome to the show. Not doing a super. Hold on a second. I don't know. I'm waiting for a guest to come right now, so I don't know. It's up to you. Nah, at 3. They got a couple minutes. Yeah. All you got to do is let's see. Let me get a switch over. Hold on. Right. Yeah. Let me switch to camera one. Oh, we got a special guest named Greg is coming on board, and yeah. So go ahead and pull up the mic right there. Oh, yeah. Don't worry. It's whatever's showing up there. That's what's on screen, so you can remain anonymous.
Okay.
The Yeah, so it's kind of cool. It's like the idea behind the podcast, and it's funny too because the last one was 2 hours and 47 minutes. It already got 1,100 views. It's kind of crazy, huh? And I don't even. It's almost. I don't know how. That's only on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay.
So 1,100 views on YouTube. That was
And how do
wild.
I find it?
Sober Voyager podcast, and so yeah. So basically, that's kind of like where we're at. So kind of just. It's always been about an experiment in life is an experiment, right? It seems like in recovery is an experiment, And so even like, hey, what's going on, Greg? I see you coming in there. So yeah, we're all right. How's it going?
I was filling your spot.
Filling the spot. Basically, I went ahead and kind of what I always do is I kind of start out. It's like the best way to do any type of podcast is just make it just like you're just talking to people. You don't have to like look at the mic and kind of you don't ever really like try to focus on what you're doing. You just start talking because the best content always comes out of just free form. So if you just look at it, it's like, hey, it's open mic. Just come on, sit down. This is Cassidy.
Hi.
She's one of the therapists here.
I'm the therapist here.
Come on, sit down.
Nice to meet you.
Relax.
Get out of your way.
And then you might want to shut the door.
Yeah. Do you guys want coffee or anything?
No, we're good.
Okay.
He's got his big water jug.
Sounds good.
All right. What's going on, brother? All right. Good to see you. All right, man. So, yeah, pull that mic up, see if that works for you. I didn't really. Yeah, let's see what we got here. Yeah. So basically, your camera 2. See camera 2. I'm gonna adjust. I'm gonna switch over to camera 2 really quick to find out what we got to do with the camera. So right now, while you're adjusting yourself, pull your mic in right there, and let me. Is that seat height good for you? You want it higher or lower? And then I'll just kind of because that's gonna be. Just like that. So you're a little bit higher. Let me just go ahead and raise this up. See how that fits. Wait, that's not that one. Which one is it? It's this one. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right. That looks good. You're good on camera. You look good on camera. I think that looks pretty good. So we'll go switch over to. So if you're in camera 2, that means camera 2. There it is. All right. Camera 1, camera 2, and camera 3. See?
We can.
Three
Ooh.
cameras. It's kind of a 3-camera setup. So, yeah, we're on Sober Voyager. It's on YouTube. It's called the Sober Voyager podcast, I think. I don't even know the name of my own podcast. I should look, huh? And I should even actually make sure it's like it says that it's on air. And, you know, one of our biggest problems with any type of
Sober Voyager.
Sober Voyager. Is it on? Did you find it? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Let me see if I can find it on here. So what's going on? How's your day?
Interesting.
It's going to get more interesting, right?
Yeah.
Were you like, what were you been in your head about this at all?
Oh, yeah,
or-
big time.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, that's understandable. I get it. You know, it's funny. Hold on a second. Yeah, somebody just posted a picture of me. That was me back in the day. So I was like, yeah. So I wonder if you can, that's trippy, huh? Yeah, somebody, that's funny stuff. Yeah, I used to have long hair. I was, what year did you graduate high school?
78.
78. Okay. So I graduated in 83. So that makes you 6 years old. No, 5 years older than me. Yeah, close enough. 5 years. But when you get older like that, once you kind of get to our age, it's like kind of irrelevant. But at the time, somebody from 1978 versus somebody from 1983 is like,
It was huge.
It was huge. Big difference. I mean, well, because you were graduating and I was in 78, I would have been just getting into either 8th grade, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Big difference. So speaking of 8th grade,
you get past 35, 40, and it stops mattering. 5 years here.
Yeah, it's all of a sudden none of it is relevant. We're all just kind of on this. We're on like, you know, the name of the show, right, is the Sober Voyager podcast, and it says navigating the treacherous seas of recovery. Now, I'll tell you something. When I came up with the little taglines and stuff like that, I feel like most podcasts don't even have that. I kind of feel like for some reason I want it to be more like a talk show, you know, and so it's kind of a weird thing, like it's always like life isn't. We're like it's like really the whole idea of like navigating and the sea of life, you know. And it doesn't have to be just the treacherous seas of recovery. It just seems that life is somewhat treacherous, right? That for some reason or another, we just get tossed about. Some days the seas are rough, rough.
It's calm.
Some days it's calm sailing. Tell me about Greg for a second. Tell me, like, so you want to tell you, so just so everybody knows, like, so I was at a AA Al-Anon meeting, and I heard Greg speak about, he gave his, like, so it's a speaker meeting, so they first get up with the Al-Anon speaker.
There's an Al-Anon speaker, and then there's an AA speaker. Each speaker gets 20 minutes.
Right.
And, you know, you share your experience, strength, and hope, and, you know, what brought you. And, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, I try not to, I don't want to, well, let me back up. I tell my story for a couple of reasons. One is, the biggest reason is to get it out from inside me. Because the crap that I carry around that's in my head that weighs me down, if I keep it inside, it's gonna kill me.
Explain, before you explain to me, what is Al-Anon?
Al-Anon is for people who have somebody in their lives whose drinking bothers them, who's been affected by alcoholism, pure and simple. It can be a friend, relative, a family member, a loved one. It's really anybody that's had some dysfunction in their life and, you know, want to be able to get past it.
Okay, so is there, tell me about the origin of, like, so we have the 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous 12-step program. Is this another 12-step program?
It is, and we go through pretty much the exact same steps as AA does. I'll tell you how I got into Al-Anon. Well, first off, long story, but at the end of the day, I had a girlfriend who left me after COVID. There's a long story. We'll get into it, but she basically called me a dry drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And she felt that she was enabling me, that, you know, as if her words, that she was a bartender and she was serving me,
Okay.
and that I was a dry drunk. So we broke up. And I'll tell that story more, but I thought, well, if I'm a dry drunk, I need to go to AA and get fixed. And I went into an AA meeting on Beach Boulevard, Howe Hall. I'll never forget it.
All right.
And I went in there mid-afternoon, and I was a mess. And this old guy, cigar barely sticking out of his mouth, not lit, but just chewing on this old cigar, and beard and crusty old voice, and just, he'd been around a long time.
The salt of the earth, I call those guys.
Absolutely.
Those guys are the salt of the earth. The guys that, like I think that's one of the things that AA is missing anymore is those guys. Anyway, go ahead.
So and he'd been sober, I don't know, 40 years.
Yeah,
He's just,
that guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
So I sit down, and there's 8 or 10 in the room, and they go through the meeting part of it, and I'm in my head, and I'm a mess, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, and how do I make this pain stop?
Mm-hmm.
So people start to share, and it comes around to me, and everybody has identified, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic. Well, I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't identify as one, so I started to share. The guy stopped me. He said, "Are you an alcoholic?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, to share in this meeting, you have to be an alcoholic." And I was devastated. I said, God, I spent 45 minutes in here. I'm obviously I'm crying. I'm a mess.
Yeah.
And part of my isms is I don't feel like I belong. And now I got this guy telling me I don't belong. So I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'll go out and get really fucked up and come back if that'll make you feel better. And he said, nah. He said, I got a better idea. He said, why don't you try Al-Anon? So I went to an Al-Anon meeting, and I think I found a home.
Got it. So the support, the fellowship, you needed a place to go to basically express what you were going through, and you were looking for people that you could find that would be able to identify what you're going through and maybe enlighten you, share their stories so that you could find some common denominator.
I knew something was wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the pain had just gotten so bad. I wanted the pain to stop.
Yeah.
Pure and simple. I'm going to get a little emotional.
That's all right.
So my story is, and I was saying earlier, the reason I tell my story is first and foremost to get it out of me, because if it stays inside me, I'm going to wreck myself. And the second reason I tell my story is so that maybe there might be somebody else that hears a portion of it. Wow, I identify with that. Maybe I'll go to an Al-Anon meeting or an AA meeting, and I'll try to, I have pain. I want to get better. My first experience, and Mom, I know you're probably gonna listen to this. Before I tell this part of the story, I want to say I have two mothers. I have the mother that raised me, and that was the alcoholic, that was dysfunctional, that didn't know any better, didn't know how to. And the mother that I have now, and she's 90, loves me to death, my biggest fan. Two different women. So, Mom, I want to let you know I love you. And this part might be painful, so we'll go with it. My mother was my first, and I don't like the word qualifier, but that's the word that's bandied about in the program, is my first experience with an alcoholic.
So the qualifier is the person that drives you into Al-Anon meetings because of their drinking and their behavior, and then your behavior as a result of their behavior and the spiraling and the unmanageability that ensues because of it.
The rat race and the hamster wheel that we get on, and the hijinks ensue.
So that's the qualifier. Let's just go with that. Your mom's the qualifier, because there's anybody out there right now that's trying to understand this. They have a qualifier. It could be a child. It could be a husband. It could be a wife. It could be a sister, a brother, coworker, any number of people that you are in a relationship with, sure, that their drinking and their drug use becomes and affects you so much that you need a place to go to, and that's what Al-Anon's for. And so your mom's your qualifier. Let's go.
So, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I grew up in the dysfunction. My parents were divorced. They hated each other, shouldn't be married. It was a dysfunctional family,
Right.
pure and simple. It was difficult growing up. Okay. We moved around a lot. I went to 4 different junior high schools in 3 years.
Yeah.
5 schools when if you count high schools. So, and that was way before any social media. So it was very difficult to
Build relationships with people.
and keep them. And so, and every time every time I went to a new school, it was kick the new guy's ass day. So, I was continually having to fight for survival, almost literally. Because that's just what boys did back then. And maybe they still do. I don't know. But so I had a difficult childhood, never felt like I belonged, always felt less than, never felt like I belonged, and just didn't feel comfortable with who I was in my own skin.
Mm-hmm.
How I didn't end up in the other program in AA is beyond me, because I have all the characteristics of an alcoholic, but I don't have the allergy. I can put it down and walk away from it. Other than that, I feel I'm very close. I feel closer to the alcoholic than I do the Al-Anon member, because in my mind I feel like the alcoholic was the one that caused harm. I feel I did with some of my decisions and some of the things that I did, and my actions and inactions have caused harm to people. Part of growing up in a dysfunctional family is the fact that you don't learn the skill sets you need to survive properly in life. Skill sets that I learned were, hide from things, avoidance, procrastination, all the wonderful survival skills that at the time kept me away from pain, but kept me from developing. So now, one of my mother's boyfriends, and Mom, I'm sorry I'm telling this story, but it was very impactful. He was a very large gentleman. He was of Indian descent, feather, not dot. He was American Indian.
Okay.
Apache, I think he was. I'm not 100% sure, but he was a large guy. And he was on a bender, and he was drunk as a skunk. And I had come home from one of my ass kickings, and his spirituality as an Indian taught him that my spirit was putting out these vibes of weakness, and he was going to teach me how to be strong. And his way of doing that was to choke the life out of me while telling me not to be afraid. And here I am, a 12-year-old boy with this man's hand around my throat with a cocktail in the other hand, telling me don't be afraid as I'm seeing stars and I'm starting to pass out. My mother's on his shoulder trying to calm him down, relax, and finally did. But I felt that at that point in time, I look back on it, and I felt that she chose him over me, and that killed me. So I've got a lot of abandonment issues. So now we fast forward, I get into high school. I fall in love in high school, as everybody does. But she was a year older than I was, and she graduated and went off to college, and I got the Dear Greg letter. She was barely there, and boom, she left me. Then I get into college. I went to college on a track scholarship. I was a pole vaulter. I saw one of your
podcast guys. He was a pole vaulter. Yeah. We had. I was just thinking that right now. That's Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, the pole vaulter.
Yeah,
he got a scholarship to college on that.
Yeah, I should talk to the guy.
Yeah. That's.
But I jumped.
Yeah. What college did you do that
Weber
at?
State, Ogden, Utah.
Oh, Utah.
Yeah.
So now, does that mean you were Mormon?
Oh no.
Okay.
Just means,
Ogden.
It just
I know
means
Ogden.
that they paid for my education.
Okay.
So I went. Didn't like it.
Because you grew up here
I grew up in Southern California.
Southern California. Got it. Okay.
So snow and Mormons.
And you got a scholarship to college?
Yeah.
For pole vaulting?
For pole vaulting.
Oh, just like Ryan.
So I ended up coming back after a year, didn't like it.
Okay.
And then thought about going to Long Beach State, went there for a minute, and then quit college, which was, we'll get into that, but that was one of the things that stuck with me for a long time is that I never finished college,
Yeah.
and I was very upset with that. Okay, so as we,
Like a one-man production. So everybody out there, one-man production right now.
no worries.
So we just, if you just like, you just kind of like I said, the idea is just to get used to the flow. Like we'll just,
I'll pretend.
we'll just chat.
I'll pretend you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still there. It's all
So
good.
off to college I go, and I came back and started dating a friend of a cousin of one of my best friends in high school, and turns out our families knew each other. My mother knew her family, and it was we kind of go back family wise. We didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it, but as I started to date her more and get more information, yeah, we found out that our families had some they went to school together. So we got married, and she was my second qualifier. She turned out to be an alcoholic. I didn't know it while we were married. She left me, and I feel that was brutal. It was difficult, but then we had one daughter, and wonderful child. Sydney is her name, and she is going to be 22 in a couple of weeks, and is a senior at UCLA and getting ready to graduate. And I'm extremely proud of her. Well, we divorced, and it was difficult, and that's really when I think my ex-wife's drinking really started to kick in. I look back on it, and I see some things that maybe make me go, but for the most part, I didn't know she had a problem with the alcohol. Maybe it wasn't, because as I've learned in the programs, alcoholism is a progressive disease. It gets worse. It does not get better. Bottom line. So my daughter is going into the 8th grade, and my ex-wife, we had shared custody, and I had my daughter for the weekend, and I was supposed to drop her off, and I'm calling her because she is not at this point, the most reliable person. Not sure if she's going to be there. When she says she's going to be there, I do all the driving because she tends to show up late, or, just the way it goes. So she's not answering her phone. So now I got to get my daughter to school on, Monday morning. This is Sunday night. So I find out later that she's in the hospital. She aspirated, threw up in her own lungs, got so drunk that she threw up in her own lungs and got herself to the hospital. And she was in intensive care on a ventilator in ICU, and was there for a week and almost died. And that's kind of when all hell broke loose. I realized what was going on. I spoke with my daughter, and she was going into the 8th grade. She didn't really know what it was about. She knew there was a problem, but couldn't put her finger on it. We went to some Alateen meetings, and that's where I got some information on Al-Anon. And it wasn't so much for me, but it was for my daughter. I didn't think I had a problem at the time, but I was trying to figure out how to talk to my daughter about her mother's drinking. And I remember I brought Sydney home, and I had all the materials all over the desk, the living room table. And we came in, and she looked down and said, "What's that stuff?" And I said, "Well, it's about your mother's drinking." And she burst into tears. And the first thing that I read was the open letter from an alcoholic to her.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And basically saying it's not, and let her know it's not her fault. And then the other thing was I needed to assure her that I was not an alcoholic, that I didn't have the drinking problem. And when I told her that, she said, "Daddy, I know." She said, "I marked your bottle." I had a bottle of Jack Daniels, and she had gone in.
How old was she at the time?
Going into 8th grade.
Wow.
So, and I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "I went in, put a mark on the bottle to see, see how much and that bottle probably still there today. I don't drink. I drink occasionally, and I rarely drink at home. But I had a bottle of Jack, and that was the only alcohol I had in the house at the time. And she was marking it, and then we talked about some of the things that she had done,
So let's go back for a minute, because there's something interesting in your story, and I think that this is important too, because as you were describing your childhood, with your mother and growing up with her boyfriends and stuff like that, and then the school and transitioning around. And this is something important too, because there is always the hidden cause of any type of addictive behavior, or even like because in Al-Anon, it's like, like you said something too. There's a couple things that you did talk about. One was that you identified more with members of Alcoholics Anonymous than you kind of felt you did with Al-Anon for some reason, right? Because of the behavior associated with just your behavior in general, as it was in relation to, because you felt like you were also hurting people, I guess, right? As a result of either controlling or being codependent, or there could be a number of things. We can go into that because that's an interesting. We could go into that rabbit hole a little bit.
No, we
but
will.
The other part of it too, which is I think is something that we always kind of want to address, is the trauma that's associated with childhood trauma. Things like you are trying to unpack, uncover, and
there was a
opening up wounds from the past. Like it kind of. It's like I don't want to open up wounds that you can't close back up. In other words, there's like, so a lot of that's important too. And hopefully, after how many years you've been in Al-Anon?
Almost 3 years.
So you've been in Al-Anon almost 3 years. So we want to be careful, and people, and even in the audience, we want to be careful in the sense that we don't want to open up any wounds that we can't close back up during our time together. That when you leave here, I just want to make sure we're clear on that, because
we're good. I mean, it's
a lot of times regurgitating or just bringing up our past triggers our feelings and emotions. I mean, that's what it does,
and that's okay. And for me, I need that, because if I don't, I stuff it down. There's one of my friends in the program. We talk about this all the time. It was Married with Children. Al Bundy is talking to Bud. Bud comes in and says, "Dad, we need to talk." And he says, "What, son?" He says, "Dad," he says, "getting feelings." And Al Bundy says, "Oh, no, you don't." He says, "You take them, you stuff them down, you stuff them way down. Do not, you don't have feelings." And that's where I come from, is I had stuffed all these feelings and emotions down, and that I haven't dealt with them. And so for me, sunlight is the best disinfectant. The more I can talk about my story, the less it hurts me, and the more that I gain control over it instead of it gaining control over me. So don't feel bad about tearing some Band-Aids off things.
Well, I think that's a good point to make. I'm glad you kind of like backed it up with that right there, because the people that are listening to this, the people that are going to experience this, because a lot of the times we take a look at our Sober Voyager podcast, and since I'm a 20 years into my sobriety, everything I focus on is we look at the past and we kind of revel in the damage we've done, to be honest with you. A lot of us it's like sharing war stories for us. And then we kind of gloss over the impact that it's had on the people around us. And then we jump right into, hey, look at me now. Look what I'm doing now. Whereas the Al-Anon has a different kind of approach to it, I feel like. And so hopefully people that are going to listen to this podcast and share this podcast, like and subscribe. See, we got our little like, subscribe, and share. See, that's pretty good. Cool. I got cool little stuff. The idea is, if you're out there and you know somebody I think my goal with bringing you here was that there is another facet of this disease that isn't being talked about online. Now, I don't go online and look up Al-Anon podcasts or anything like that, but for the most part, if I was to really want to dig and go deeper into this, it's the families that are affected by the addicts. They're suffering too, in a way that's so much more intense than the addict, because like I was telling you before, the addict comes into Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program and he starts telling everybody how, much of a badass he is. And I'm no different. I want to tell people I was homeless, I was in prison, I was this and I was that. And then, something happened, an impact moment in my life. And then I want to tell you about how great my life is because of the 12 steps and having a God and the fellowship and all that good stuff. And now I'm, again, the alcoholic, right, is on his merry way, and the Al-Anon is still sitting there trying to deal with
holding this bag of shit
and
saying, "Now what do I do?"
Yeah,
and I get that, and that's where I feel akin to the alcoholic, because my inactions and some of my actions harmed other people. And one of the things that I have learned in the program is taking responsibility for what's mine. My problem, because of my, the way I came up and what I was taught and wasn't taught was, I feel like way too much of it is my responsibility, that it's all my fault, that I'm the reason that the marriage failed, and I'm the reason that Stephanie left me, and that I'm responsible for it all because I wasn't good enough, I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good looking enough, I wasn't enough, and it was all me. And that's one of the things that I'm learning is I am responsible for exactly, no more, no less than 50% of each one of those relationships that failed.
Yeah.
Only 50%. And what Al-Anon is teaching me is to take responsibility for that 50%. And now what are you going to do? Now the cat's out of the bag, as it were.
Yeah, I get it. I feel that same way. I have a tendency, like even in the big book, when we read the big book and we're doing our 4-step and we're getting to the 5th step, there's a line in the book that says, we disregard the other person entirely. Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? And I always did take more of 100%. I mean, every time there was something wrong that went wrong in my life or wrong in the lives of the people I was with, I always was like not trying to be a martyr, but somehow I would feel like I really, even though there might have been a part of me that I know I caused it all, but I would take full blame, full responsibility, and then struggle with that over and over and replay what I could have done differently. And I mean, I just went through that. I kind of just went through that just now. And then having listened to and watched this last divorce that, I mean, I've been married twice and I'm in my second. I just got done getting divorced. And a lot of my looking back at it just focused on, and I could disregard the other person entirely. That's what I have to do. But I take responsibility. And then I marinate in it and I think about it and it just.
Then I beat myself up for it.
And I'm, just that's what I've been doing too. Going, oh, if I hope I'm not looking at it from that morbid regret position, because I don't mind having resentments or anything. I just don't want to live in regret, And part of me was regretting the things that I had done and what I didn't do. And most importantly, it's what I didn't do that caused the pain. And so I look at that and go, yeah, I could have really steered things differently. But like you said, maybe I couldn't have, because I was only responsible for 50% of that. And if the other person doesn't bring their full game to it, then you're doomed. And so I just had to, I feel like just recently I've came to the position where I just kind of accepted that in my own life. Just recently, this is all fresh for me too, because I don't think I was ever in, I'm used to being I've been sober 20 years, so I'm supposed to live this life of, I have a God on my understanding.
If it starts with I'm supposed to.
Yeah,
you're
right.
going down a path that leads to nowhere good.
Right, yeah. So that's kind of an Al-Anon teaching.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
And the thing that really brought me here was I didn't know how to deal with life on life's terms.
Yeah.
And the steps, working the steps is amazing. It's a simple program, but it's not easy. And anybody that says it is full of shit.
Yeah. There's one of my favorite lines in the books is there's a line where that saying comes from is out of the big book. It's simple, but not easy. And then it says, and it describes what that means. It means this. It says it's simple, not easy. There's a price that has to be paid. There is a price. And the reason it's not easy, because the price is the destruction of self-centeredness. That's the price. And because even in my trying to take responsibility, guess what that is? That's making it about me.
One of the differences.
That's again making it about me.
One of the differences of the two programs is in AA, they teach you to think about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
In Al-Anon, they think you to teach about yourself.
Oh.
Because in Al-Anon, we tend to try so hard to fix the other person and get so wrapped up into other people's stuff that we neglect looking at ourselves and taking responsibility for our shit and making sure, our side of the street is clean. And so that's one of the differences of the program is that AA teaches you to be not so self-centered, because I'm not going to kid anybody when I say alcoholics tend to be self-centered and about themselves. And
Well, most, like, if you're like me, that's like your favorite subject.
your
Most
favorite thing.
alcoholics like revel in self-centered, self-seeking, pleasure-centered. Everything's about me. I mean, that's kind of how you get where. That's kind of how you get where we're at. It's because we make everything about us, and even in the pain and suffering, we're making it about us.
But the thing that makes us the same is how we deal with the pain that we have now. And that's why we tell our stories, so that people can say, wow, I feel that same pain. I've been down that road. I've been there before. And this person's telling me that there's a way out, and it's through the steps. But the thing that makes us the same is the pain. That an alcoholic drinks to get away from the pain. And in Al-Anon, we think wrong to get rid of the pain. It's to not deal with it. My cocktail of choice is, in my disease, what gets me in the most trouble, that fucked up my first marriage and fucked up my last relationship, was my thinking. And my problem is, and you learn this through the steps. And then the fourth step was very, very difficult for me, because having to do a fearless and searching moral inventory.
Yeah.
Is very, very, for me, it was hard. Now all of a sudden you're taking the spotlight away from all the shit that's happened in your life, because it's happened. I can't go back and change my childhood. I can't go back and change any of that. I can't go back and change the fact that my ex-wife's an alcoholic, and I can't change the fact that my ex-girlfriend left me. All that's happened, but now and I understand. It's helped me to get to some acceptance by understanding that it wasn't all my fault, that some of it was circumstance, and because I didn't have the tools, I didn't know how. And learning to forgive myself for not knowing when I didn't know it. And that's what the program is about. So you get to the fourth step, and you do that fearless and searching moral inventory, and you figure out, okay, what are my defects and what are my assets? And I realized that this is how I drank. And I don't know, can you see the...
Yeah, let me...
There's avoidance.
Yeah, here, check this out. So
Denial.
Hold it right there for a second. So I'll just kind of do a quick... I'll tell you, while you're holding that up, just kind of, it says denial, spin it around, I'll read it out. It says isolation, and it says procrastination, and then it says avoidance. And it looks like it's Maker's Mark bottle, right?
It is.
And we were at the meeting of alcohol. We were at the AA Al-Anon meeting, and while you were talking, when you go, this is my bottle or something, and I was almost going, oh my, because I saw the top of the bottle,
Yeah.
and I thought
I
thought you were pulling out a bottle of alcohol.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, this guy's got a bottle of alcohol, and he's going to bring it out at a meeting right now. That's going to
more than half the room is AA,
and more.
People are going to freak out.
Totally, people are going to freak out. And so I'm like, oh my God. And I started, and then when that bottle came out, and it said, here, let me see it right over there. Let me have it for really quick, because I think from where I'm at right now, oh, wait a minute. I think if I go like this, and I go like this, so this is the bottle right here that he pulls out, and it says denial, and then it says resentments, and then it says self-doubt, and then over on this side, it says isolation. I don't know if you guys can read that. And it says people pleasing. It says indecision. I am enough. And then over here, procrastination. And when I saw you bring out this bottle and start reading out these words, and fear, anxiety, overthinking, control, self-control, attachment, inner critic, avoidance, putting my needs to the side, and self-pity. This bottle right here is what made me think, you know what? This guy is putting some time, energy, and effort into his recovery. And I think that this is something people need to see, because this is, I don't want to say more, alcoholism is a deadly disease, but what we suffer from is a thinking It's our
when you strip
thinking.
away the alcohol, you take the alcohol away from the alcoholic, you're still left with that.
Exactly. You're still left with this. So if you can see this right now, just look at this. This is powerful.
And the difference between, an alcoholic can quit drinking, and he can say it's been 45 days since I've had a drink, or it's been whatever since I have a drink. You can prove that by a blood test, a urine test, a breath test. You can tell when somebody's been drinking. It's really hard to tell. Well, let me back up. Those are most all of my defects, my character defects.
Mm-hmm.
And if left to my own devices, I will drink from that bottle. And my drink of choice was procrastination, avoidance, denial, and isolation. You mix that together with a healthy dose of low self-esteem and no self-confidence, and you have a cocktail which I call the slow screw, which will eventually slowly screw your life up. And it did with me. This is what I have to deal with, and this is what I brought to the table in the two of my huge relationships. That's what I brought to the table. That's who I was. And I didn't know I had those problems until I got into the program and started working the steps, pure and simple. But the hard part about that is I can drink from that bottle and nobody knows it. You can't breathalyze for it. You can't blood test for it. You can't urine test for it. I can get fucked up as I want drinking that, and I can get behind the wheel of a car and go to work and drive and do all that stuff and mess up relationships, and nobody knows that I'm drunk on procrastination or if I'm drunk on avoidance, denial, or isolation. So when I go to open AA meetings, because I do, and the reason that I do is because I like to hear the stories. I like to hear how fucked up people's lives were, and then I see how the program fixed them, how they're experiencing strength and hope. Because then I say that there's hope for me. They can, I can. So when I identify it at an open AA meeting, all I say is, "Hi, my name is Greg, and I don't want to drink today because I don't want to drink from that bottle. That bottle will only hurt me."
Powerful. I mean, so powerful right now, Greg. Thank you, man, for sharing that. And I can't emphasize how powerful it was when I first heard you. What you just got done saying right now, drinking from this bottle, is something that, like you said, it can't be tested for. There's no odor. You can get in your car and drive to work and nobody knows.
I can sip a little bit of it, and I can get in there and I can isolate and just be by myself, and I can sip a little bit more, and I can deny that I have that I need to get out of my apartment, that I need to go do something. I can sip a little bit more and avoid the problems that I need, that I have to pay bills, or I have to do this, I have to do that. And I can sip a little bit more and just not fucking do anything about it at all and procrastinate my life away. I don't want to be that person. I'm not that person anymore. And I don't want to drink today.
So do you guys do in Al-Anon, we have our prayers. We have the Serenity Prayer.
Absolutely.
We have the 3rd step prayer. We have the 7th step prayer. We have the 11th step prayer. Now, in the 3rd step prayer, it talks about bearing witness to those we would help of God's power, his love, and his way of life. Today, you're here giving testimony. And my belief and my hope always is that through your shared experience and your dedication to helping, like, to put that ball together, and then even to share, like how you just got done sharing, and express your emotional and how much it impacts you. The 3rd step prayer says that, we ask God to take away our difficulties so that victory over them may bear witness to those we would help of God's power, his love, and his way of life. Now, how much emphasis do you see, like, because what I hear right now is somebody sharing testimony. Now, where at in the, if Al-Anon uses the same 12 steps, right? Mm-hmm. They're, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Step 3 has made a decision to turn our will and our life over the care of God as we understood him. And I was wondering what your position on that was, and then if you do the third step prayer, like how I was just describing to you, like, so bearing witness is giving testimony. So we're here to talk. And so one of the most profound experiences that I've had in my recovery is understanding how it's important me to, even if I just say, I want to thank God or the God of my understanding for my recovery today, for the power that I've been restored into my life in choice, decision, whether I isolate, whether I procrastinate, whether I avoid, or whether I'm in denial. Those are all attributed to this relationship I have with my higher power. And it comes from sometimes just prayer, acknowledging, waking up, setting a routine in my daily life that enables me to at least have somewhere to go with my feelings before I start the day and set an intention for the day. But more importantly, so that when I go out into the world like you are right now, I can share with people how this relationship with my higher power has restored me, or just even maybe I was never, there wasn't any sanity in my life. Maybe he just started building the sanity
in that prayer,
because,
restoring me to sanity. I don't think I ever had it.
right. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that I've commented before at meetings, that when I hear that, restore me to sanity, I laugh and I go, I never was.
Right. Yeah. So I would have to say that's a lot like my story. I think I was insane out of the gate before I even took a drink. I was already in avoidance, procrastination, denial. I hadn't yet isolated yet. I think that would be more of like at the end. I think for me, it was always denying and procrastinating and avoiding.
Everybody's cocktail of choice is going to be different.
Yeah.
And that's why there's all this writing on here, is because I took this, the bottle just had the 4 things on here. And when you first saw it, the rest of these, I took to another meeting and shared it, and I passed the bottle around, and I had people write on there what their ism was, that what they wanted to, I guess, get rid of, and what character defect they wanted to work on. So passed it around the meeting, and they wrote on it. So and a lot of these things that you read, are the same as mine. I feel the same. I feel them, maybe not to the same degree, but I do. And I get up in the morning, and for the past year and a half or so, I've been getting up at about 5:30, and I do some physical activity, and then I meet a friend of mine, and we walk in the mornings. I get to his house about 6:30. And anonymity is a big part of the program. So I'm.
You don't have to say his name. You got a friend that you go walking with. Is he in a program, or
he's in the program, and he knows who he is, and very good friend of mine. He's like my second sponsor, and we read, we do some daily readings, and we go for a walk, and we'll talk or we won't. And we also pick up some trash as we go.
Yeah. Where do you guys go walk? What?
Huntington Beach.
Huntington Beach. Okay, got it.
What is it? Adams and Magnolia, and just around there. If anybody's
Okay.
ever seen us walking out there
All right.
early in the morning.
Yeah.
And how that started was he's got some health issues and wanted to lose some weight.
All right.
And I had a heart attack in about almost 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years in August. And so a lot of things had to change in my lifestyle. I had high cholesterol. I had a 100% blockage in my circumflex artery, and they went in. The story goes that my daughter was home from school, and I was having the only symptom that I was feeling was I had heartburn. I don't get heartburn.
Mm-hmm.
And I had her stop by CVS on the way home from work, and I said, I'm out of Tums. Can you get me? She's eating them by the hand. She talked me into going to the hospital, or excuse me, urgent care. They went into the EKG, and came back inconclusive, and I was just going to go home.
Yeah.
My daughter said no, and the doctor said, you might want to go by the hospital and have it checked out by the hospital. And they gave me a couple of EKGs, and they both came back inconclusive. But the thing they were able to do there is give me a blood test, and there is a chemical that your heart secretes, tripped something on. I can't remember. But your heart secretes it when it's in trauma.
Okay.
and that's how they tell if you're heart attack.
Oh.
And so the blood test came back, and the doctor said you're having a heart attack. He didn't say you had.
You're in the
Having.
having. Wow, you got lucky that it wasn't.
So they immediately then they started asking me, when was the last time you ate? All that kind of stuff, and took me up to the cath lab, and I angiogram through the groin.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go through and they find the blockage, found it, took it out, put a stent in there. And I remember they showed me the blockage. It looked like a piece of white, like pink rice.
Wow.
And saved my life.
Yeah, I just got my calcium score. You don't even want to know. 490 on my left anterior descending. It's the calcium score, so it's supposed to be 0.
Oh.
So I have like 90% blockage on the Widowmaker.
Oh, you better get that.
Yeah, well, I got an appointment with the cardiologist. I went and I'm lucky. I went to get I went to the body scan place, and they scanned my body, and they found a nodule on one of my lungs and a cyst on my kidney, and then they found out that where all the calcium buildup in my heart was, and in the main one is the
cholesterol or calcium.
Calcium. So my cholesterol. I interestingly enough, when I did my cholesterol blood work, I mean, it seemed elevated in some areas, but I've seen my triglycerides way higher before. Everything seemed to be relative. A couple were, maybe a little over, maybe I don't know, like 300 or something was my HD. I think whatever my bad one was, like 300 or something. But yeah, so I got that health scare going on right now too.
No, and then a couple days later they pulled out the catheter and almost bled out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they've got you pumped full of blood thinners.
Oh, right.
And so this thing only took like 2 or 3 stitches.
Yeah.
But it's in an artery, a major artery.
Yeah.
And the nurse pulls it out.
And then just.
And her eyes get this big around, and she was this little thing, and she is on me with her thumbs pressing into the artery,
Yeah.
holding all the blood back. And as she's yelling for help, and they come in and they had me in this medieval torture device.
Wow.
It was like the backside of a spoon that pressed on the wound, and then they strapped it around your leg, and it had to come along. And they cinched it down.
To stop the blood flow.
A tourniquet.
Tourniquet.
And then they took my leg and they tied it to the bed, and for 2 days I couldn't move.
Wow.
It only takes 20 minutes, maybe, if that,
to bleed out. Yeah.
And so it was close, but they were able to stop the bleeding. That was kind of scary.
Yeah.
And I got out of the hospital, and then the game was on. It was horrible. That's really when I hit my bottom. I had lost weight. I was down to about 149 pounds. And I didn't care. I was like, God, take it.
Yeah. That's scary. Like I hope I don't have to go through any of that stuff right now either, Like I know I got my I got whatever it is I'm doing right now for my health. I'm scared a little bit. Not really. I believe in God. I trust God. I know that He sent me to get to get all my work done. And
it's been difficult. I want to touch on the God thing.
Oh yeah, let's go back to that. Let's kind of get back on track.
So in the hospital, that's really where I really the next 6 months probably was my worst. The medication they were giving me was causing severe depression.
Yeah.
And it just made it worse. I wasn't suicidal, but I didn't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
And I was still going to meetings, and my sponsor came to the hospital, and it was still somewhat COVID time, so it wasn't like the whole family could come in and see me. And it was difficult because I'm in this dark, dingy room, and I could show you the picture, but my whole body, lower half, was bruised, and the blood flow. The blood it looked horrible. I almost died, and I'm thinking of I don't give a shit. So slowly, the medication we changed, and finally went off, and so I started feeling less depressed. Within the program, the steps, the first step admitted that that life was unmanageable, that you had no control. That was easy for me. I knew I was fucked up. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. But coming to believe that there was a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity was a tough one for me.
Okay. That's a big obstacle for a lot of people.
And
So yeah, go ahead.
so it was, the God of that I grew up with, of my understanding, that I was basically assigned to me. And it was funny because my mother and my father did not press religion. My mother went to parochial schools, hated it, swore she wouldn't do it to her kids.
Yeah.
Came from a very Irish Catholic background, and it runs in the family. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My grandmother was an alcoholic. She's been sober for 40, 50 years now, but she had her bouts with it. So I don't know where the religion, I don't want to use the word disdain, but God and I didn't get along. The God that I grew up with was vengeful.
Mm-hmm.
He kept score. He was not loving, was not kind. Everything that you didn't want a God to be. And so it was hard for me to work the steps 2 and 3 because I didn't believe in God the way I thought I was supposed to believe in God. The Catholic school of God. That God, he and I did not get along. I have come to believe in a power greater than myself because when I think about it, there are some things that I just don't understand. I should have died a couple of times in my life. I didn't. I could have and should have. I should have died with the heart attack. If my daughter had not been home from college, I would have gone home and I'd be dead.
Yeah.
Pure and simple, because there would have been nobody there to do anything about it, and it happened, and I'd be gone. So I still struggle with it. I also call this program I Forget Anonymous because I forget. I've had 60-some years of programming in a different way, in a different lifestyle that didn't work well for me. And so to now all of a sudden turn everything around and say, yeah, I believe in God, and I'm turning my will and my life over to God as I understand it. It's hard to do that, my self-will.
So, like when I was talking more about testimonies and stuff, like the third step prayer is bearing witness, right? Giving a testimony to how God's power works in your life. Do you have any? Would you be able to, even though you feel this way, and you kind of obviously you've gotten past that, because you've been around for a while, right? Do you have any experiences that you feel that are divinely, like you said, the one experience that you just talked about was, your daughter, had her not been home, you wouldn't have been able to do that. But is there a time, and okay, you got something right there. Maybe it goes along with what I'm asking right now.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. What do you got?
One of my character defects is I don't feel like I'm enough. And we were walking one morning, cold and wet and damp. Only a couple months ago, very recent. And like I said, we pick up trash. It's just something we do. Take a bag with us, and so if we see a napkin on the ground, we pick it up.
Right.
And I looked down, and we'd had a conversation before we left about me feeling that I don't deserve and not feeling enough. And I find this piece of paper on the ground. Pick it up, and that's what.
It says, "I am a hardworking person who makes good decisions and respects others' opinions. I am enough." And it says on the other side the same thing. I'm a hardworking person who makes good decisions and respects others' opinions. I am enough. What do you think?
Call those God shots.
That's a God shot.
Turn the other side. You can see. To find that on the ground. I mean, come on. How do you explain that?
What were you going through right before this happened?
Not feeling enough. Feeling inadequate.
So you do have testimony about how God is, and God works in a way that's mysterious, right? He provides what you need when you need it.
That's the rumor.
That's the rumor, but it's like that's the testimony. So that the thing about God's love is this type of experience that you have that should be like solidifying concrete evidence that there is a force that's working on your behalf when you need it the most. And I think that the most powerful testimony we have is to recognize that, accept it, and share it with others like you are right now. I don't think that there are some things that could be more powerful than that, but in respect to what I was really driving at is our ability to share God's power, his love, and his way of life with other people so that they can find the solution that they're looking for. That's why you're here. That's why you're on the show, right? That's why you go out and do what you do, is because when God does a miracle and saves you from death, right? Then you then have a responsibility to go out and carry a message to those people who are still suffering. And that's really what the 12 steps are to empower you to do, is to enable you to take these experiences and let the person who struggles. I know that there's this, I was talking about this early day, the Jordan Peterson, he did this tour, and I didn't even know who Jordan Peterson was. I just knew he was a guy who cried a lot when he gave his story, right? And that's what I said. Oh, and somebody bought tickets and we went over there, and apparently he was on this tour, and it was called He Who Struggles with God. That was the name of his, like, I don't know, United States tour of just this guy that was from Canada. And I really didn't know a lot about him. But when I got there, I didn't know he was going to talk about God. I didn't know he was going to talk about his struggles with God. And I didn't know he was going to have his daughter share her testimony about how she found Jesus Christ. And it wasn't just this God of his understanding. It was very specific. And then he goes on to break scripture down, kind of almost like a sermon, like a way a pastor would, but from a very clinical perspective, from a psychological perspective as it relates to human nature and the correlation between biblical times and the meaning of that scripture. And he translated it in a way that I'd never heard before. But the essence of it was he who struggles with God, something that you just got done saying, yet we have these divine interventions, I guess is what I've always called them.
God shots.
God shots that come into play. Now, after having this happened, how do you explain it? Do you still feel that you struggle with this understanding of God?
I struggle with it on a daily basis.
Uh-huh.
That's part of my isms.
So you don't see that as a moment to go, God, thank you. I am so grateful for what you've done for me, for showing up when I needed you the most. You know I struggle with you. I know. And so don't you feel like that sometimes these are those times that God is revealing himself to you? And then
At times I do, at other times I struggle with it because I still feel the pain. And I'm not, I guess I heard some in a meeting, I can't remember where I heard it, but I'm not a very religious person.
Mm.
And the way I heard it and the way I like to say it is, religion is for people that are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality are for people who have been to hell and don't want to go back. And I try and be as spiritual as I can be, but part of it is all wrapped up in me feeling that I don't deserve it, and I'm not good enough for God's love or a higher power's love. And that's part of, this drinking from this bottle of the shitty things that if there was a loudspeaker attached to my thoughts in my head,
yeah,
I would be in a little rubber room. People would think I was absolutely fucking crazy.
that's what I was kind of getting at. One of the things I wanted to say is like one of the things that I look for in testimony and people's lives, their story, where they're at in their recovery process, because you're in recovery. Al-Anon is recovery.
Always will be.
And you're always going to be in recovery. And the idea is to continue to grow in that recovery. And whenever people have gone through all 12 steps, but they're still in this, I guess, struggle with God concept, this hanging on to old beliefs and experiences that were kind of formed a lot of the trauma, or they associate this God idea, like you said, and it's tied into their trauma, and their trauma is tied into that as well. Now you've come to the 12-step program. You've been given an outline. And in that outline, it says that we turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand him. And then from there, we start practicing this step 3 concept. And this is something that I've always gone to find out where people are at with this, because I think that this is one of the most missed concepts. Is if I'm moving forward in the rest of my steps, and it's a progressive recovery process, right? I'm always going to go back to this idea of what the guy who struggles with God. It seems like there's this big struggle, and it's almost like they're not really turning their will and their life over to the care of this God as they understand him. They're still hanging on to their will and their understanding. Sure. And how do you let go, and how do you reconcile having gone through all that stuff, but still hanging on to your concept, your ideas, the trauma and the experience? Is that something that you could see as an opportunity in your program to try to set aside and embrace something new in terms of, I guess, sharing those experiences and bringing to life this relationship that God is having with you, so that you could become more of, say, a believer who is no longer in doubt? Because it sounds like even still, there's this denial associated with it.
It's very difficult. I have not had an epiphany, an aha moment where the seas have not parted and the burning bush has not spoken to me. And I guess I'm okay with that. My belief, my spirituality is mine. That's one of the things that I've learned in the program, is a God of my understanding. And so I try to be as spiritual as I can, and I forget. Like I said earlier, I call this I Forget Anonymous. I forget to do some of the things that my program has taught me to do that works, and I forget. I'm not perfect. I fuck up. I make mistakes. I don't remember. I forget to do some things, and I go, oh, shit, and talk to my sponsor, and I call God Goose. Mm-hmm. I'm big on movie quotes.
Okay.
I love it from Top Gun, when Tom Cruise is at the bow of the boat, and he's got his buddy Goose's dog tags.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me, Goose. That's my higher power. Someone that can talk to me and show me the right direction.
Yeah, I get it. I feel that. I can feel how that's heartfelt for you. It's probably that a lot of people kind of are wanting to be, they want to experience that direction.
We want to experience the immediate moment, and I know I did. But I want the burning bush. I want the bolt of lightning. I want to know for a fact that it exists. I don't get to have that. That's frustrating at times. Doesn't mean that I don't know the right thing to do, because I do. I honest to God believe that in my head, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing at any given time and what I should be doing that is best for me. But what keeps me doing it is fear.
Mm.
I'm afraid that I'm going to do it wrong. I get on that hamster wheel of all these things, and it slows me down and it keeps me from doing what I need to do. But when I calm down and get that moment of pause, my sponsor talks about, to say, okay, is this really what you want to be doing? Is there a better way of doing it? These are important questions that I have to ask myself, and I forget to do it sometimes. I get caught up in my isolation. caught up in my procrastination, avoidance, because those are all survival skills that I learned very early on that kept me alive. That's I we do what we know how to do the best, and I know how to do all this stuff really, really good.
So if we were to take another bottle, right, and this is the bottle of recovery, and what would that bottle look like? The bottle you're sipping on now. So the message always goes experience what happened. Uh, there's experience, strength, and hope. What happened? There's what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. So the impact moment is like you said, the catalyst. You were telling a story about the catalyst that brought you into Al-Anon and then and it's basically kind of the history of your life. It kind of starts from the time the catalyst for the Al-Anon begins at the trauma at childhood, and
Well,
it's
you have that moment where you know something's wrong and you don't know how to fix it. Raise your hand, and that was the moment that I walked into an AA meeting. The old guy said, "Go to an Al-Anon meeting." That's what started me on my journey. What the opposite to this bottle are the steps, the program, going to meetings. It's having that discussion with yourself, that fight sometimes with yourself, and sometimes it's a knockdown, drag out. I am not going to go down that path. I am not a piece of shit. I do belong. Start thinking of all the things that I have done and the good things instead of concentrating on my defects. Concentrate on my assets.
100%. So speaking of assets, the what it's like now, the hope, the version, this is the message and the time that we talk about. Hey, now that I've submitted to the program and I've submitted to the steps and I've worked the 12 steps and you've worked all 12 steps.
No, I have not.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
I'm on step 9 as we speak.
Okay.
Making amends.
Okay. But even now, you're still like literally. It was told to me once I started in this program. I was literally, you gave a story of how your higher power has worked in your life. You must practice if you're carrying a message at an Al-Anon meeting or an AA meeting, you're essentially trying to carry the message to other people who are still suffering. That's like step 12. I mean, short of just going through the 9th step and the 8th step of looking at, the people you had harmed and your willingness and the actions that you took to go out and make amends to people, 10, 11, and 12, you're kind of doing already. I mean, even today, we're talking about God, getting close to God, and then carrying a message to other people. What does it look like? We don't have to say you got to do all 12 steps because carrying the message is what you're doing right now. What has happened in your life to describe to us the things that have happened as a result of Al-Anon being a part of your life that's like been empowering, that is a message of absolute, this is where you need to go. I talk to a lot of family members who are dealing with husbands or wives or children, and they're suffering greatly from their behavior and their addictions, and I tell them you got to go to an Al-Anon meeting. And a lot of the times I feel like I might not have really the type of message that I know that you guys are there to help them. That much I know. But what are they going to expect in terms of the freedom that you get from having been in the program? What are some empowering moments and what is the hope for them? And how can you describe
moments,
that?
The hope, I have a much better relationship with my mother than I did. My mother and I spoke. I wasn't the best son in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I made amends to my mother.
Okay.
I did that early on in the program. I worked some of the steps out of order, but I felt it was important because of my mother's age. That if I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to get there,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to make an amends to my mother, because I wasn't the best son in the world. There was no question about it.
Right.
And for me to make that amends, because if I would have waited and she passed, devastated. I made amends to my father, who's no longer with us, and I did it via letter. And I've just recently done that. That was very, very emotional and difficult. I think I've made amends with my daughter. I'm not. I know we talked. I have a much better relationship with my daughter than I think I did before. I got into Al-Anon. My relationships, my family, my sister, she and I have connected on a level that I don't think we. I was able to. I tried to reach out to my ex-wife and make an amends, but she won't return any of my calls. So I had to send her a letter. That bummed me out. I didn't want to take the chicken shit way out and do it in a letter and mail it and say, okay, I'm done. I wanted to do it face to face because it says in the steps, make direct amends where possible.
Where possible. And if it's not possible, it's not possible.
You know, and it was not possible. And it was not because of me.
Okay.
I wanted to make that amends. I haven't made my amends yet to my ex-girlfriend. She will get her amends. So my relationship with my daughter and with other people, I am much more authentic. One of the things that I wasn't with my ex-wife and my girlfriend was emotionally available. I didn't understand how to talk to somebody. With them, it was I just wanted to fix things. That's what we do as men. We're supposed to fix things. I didn't know how to be there for another human being. I do now. I can listen to somebody's problems and not jump and say, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Just be there for them and listen. And if they want what I think, I would have done, I'll be happy to give my opinion, only if asked.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I'm really proud of is I told you earlier that I went to college, but I never graduated.
Yeah.
And it's stuck in my crawl. It was something that I always felt less than for. I didn't have any type of college education. I had education, but so after being in the program for maybe a year and a half, I doing my 4-step, that was one of the things that came out. I felt that I was not happy with myself for not finishing. I went back and I found out what I needed to graduate college, and I was one class short. It was happened to be my worst class, but I went back and I took it.
Oh, nice.
Diploma.
So you got a diploma. So
Yeah.
These are the things that happen as a result. These are all the good things that are happening to you as a result of actually committing yourself, becoming accountable, working the program, uncovering, discovering, discarding the things about yourself. And then now you've applied this new, I guess you could say, version of yourself into the world.
Exactly. I'm just trying to be the best possible me that I can be.
Yeah.
I got stuck in both my marriage and my relationship with my ex-girlfriend is I tried to be what I thought they wanted me to be.
What do you think about relationships? That's really kind of everything right now is everybody's got this, you're either getting in a relationship or getting out of a relationship, or you're trying to get into another relationship. And, going, forward in your life, what does that look like to you? Like
I have
knowing,
no idea.
does it look like I need to be with somebody that's got a basis or a foundation in an Al-Anon 12-step program so that they are working on themselves because I'm going to have to continue to work on myself? Or do I want to try to go out there and find a new person that's not in the program that is, I guess I don't want to say healthy in areas that you're not healthy in, or had never had problems like you had, or what are you looking for in terms of that goes?
I don't think that person exists.
That person might not exist. Yeah.
We've all got our crosses to bear. We've all got that bag of shit that we have.
Yeah.
And nobody's life is perfect. Everybody has had to go through things. I'll tell you a funny story. A boss that I used to work for a long time ago, he used to say, I've been in sales my entire life. I sold business phone systems. And he would say, I remember him saying this on a sales call, it's not whether or not a company, a good service organization, it's not whether or not they make a mistake. It's what they do when they make the mistake. How do they correct it? And that's what it comes down to for me is trying to get to a place where I can forgive myself for not knowing how to be the person that I wanted to be. I didn't know how to do it. It sounds so friggin' funny,
Mm-hmm.
word salad, but that's the bottom line is I got to forgive myself for not knowing what I didn't know when I didn't know it. That's who I was.
Say that again.
I got to forgive myself for not knowing what I didn't know before I knew it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to be a better person in a relationship. I didn't know how someone would tell me something's going on in their life, and the first thing I would go to is how can I make it better? How can I fix it for them? And then my mind would spin and go down, spin around about how I'm going to fix that, or what I think they should do, instead of just listening to what they're going on and how does it make you feel?
Mm.
Just to be able to be there emotionally for somebody. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to say, hey, this hurts. I thought I was supposed to be this big, strong, rich, successful man, and that nothing bothers me, Superman with his cape, but that's not who I ever was. And so I always tried to be something that I wasn't somebody else. Tried to portray this image, have this image of, I got my shit together, I know what the fuck's going on, and I got it squared away, and not only that, but I can help you get there too. And that is totally not, so far from the truth, it's
Yeah.
laughable.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think, I was sharing about this the other day. I think we, as men or women or anybody for that matter, are kind of in our early childhood, we are taught to emulate successful people, taught to emulate people that are athletically inclined, or let's say mostly, that are rich and athletically inclined. Those are the two things I remember growing up thinking, and that's what people respect and that's what people look to as success. Somebody that has a nice car and all those things. So then I go through life trying to create and develop a personality, a stage character, if you will, that I present to the world around me. And the difference, it's interesting to hear you talk about the things that you're talking about yourself. And I'm sitting here thinking about me, right? Going, hey, where do I fit in? Do I feel that way? Do I have those similar feelings, or do I just don't have feelings at all, right? And I just railroad my life and steamroll my way through life like a bull in a china shop, just being reckless and just me. Let me get what I can get and not really giving a fuck about anybody else. And then the other character, your personality is going, I do care. I want to care. And there's this weird, not weird, it shouldn't be, but this between the alcoholic and the Al-Anon, right? There's two different mindsets, but they all have the same type of, but there's this similarity. And it's interesting to me because I have a hard time, I shouldn't say like I have a hard time having feelings and being empathetic and being sympathetic. That's not something that's natural for me. I have to try to adopt that. Over the 20 years that I've been sober, I've learned to adopt that into my life as a result of doing the 12 steps. It wasn't something that came natural to me. What's natural to me is I don't fit in, so now I'm going to do whatever it takes to fit in, and then I'm just changed my colors to match the colors in this room. And then if in that room, if it's like the chameleon, right? The character always changing, always growing, always trying to portray another character. And never being satisfied with anything, just like always trying to be up here, don't want to be down here, just doesn't know how to be right in the middle and be okay. If you were dealing with a guy like me that comes into Al-Anon, right, who's got that type of mentality, how do you approach, because what happens too with that type of mentality, I just become, I look at Al-Anon and I remember going there because my son was my qualifier, right? And he was getting involved in alcohol and drugs and at a very young age. I had many years of sobriety under my belt already at that time. I was like Johnny AA, like you said, I thought I had it all figured out. People come to me, I tell them how to do life and do this and do that. And then all of a sudden, the person that means the most to me, right? I can't help them with their disease of alcoholism. So I run off to an Al-Anon meeting. And in that Al-Anon meeting, I'll be honest with you, I got there and I was kind of expecting, to be honest with you, a program that was going to help me get my son to stop drinking and using drugs.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's
Let me know how that works out.
Yeah,
for you.
yeah. Well, I honestly thought that that's what you guys were going to do for me. You were going to show me how I could go home with some information that would enable me to get him to stop using drugs and alcohol. And then I found out it was really not about him. Again, it was about me and what I do. So when you get a person like that who has experience in the 12-step program, and have you ever sponsored any guys in Al-Anon? Oh, so you haven't done that yet, but you have a sponsor, right? Okay. So I'm wondering then, how does somebody go about, is there like in the big book of Alcoholics, we have a chapter called Working with Others, chapter 7. It's devoted entirely to how we help other people through our own experience, right? How do you guys, I mean, I guess if you're not sponsoring guys, you haven't had to go into the book and work steps with anybody yet, right?
No.
But you've done it with your sponsor up until step 9, right? So you're in the middle of step 9. So what are some of the things that, I guess, since you haven't really, I guess it would, maybe you know what, I want to get.
The answer to your question is, as a sponsor, how do I help that other person? I don't.
Okay.
That's not the job of the sponsor. How do I get somebody else to stop drinking? I don't. How do I get somebody else to do anything they don't want to do? I don't. All I'm here for is a sounding board, is to listen to what you're saying, and then together we try and find a better way of doing it. Being a sponsor is more about asking questions. It's not telling anybody what to do. My sponsor has never told me how to believe in God. He's never told me how to work the steps. But he asked me questions. You know, how's that working for you? Does that serve you well today?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you need to think about doing it a different way. So a sponsor in Al-Anon is just to help guide you through the process. But at the end of the day, if you don't want it, it ain't going to get done. I can't make you do anything. I can't show you a better way of life. All I can do is be the best person that I can be. Maybe my experience, when I share my experiences with people, they go, wow, I feel that, or I've been there, I get that. Maybe what he did will work for me. Maybe I'll try that. It's not about anybody trying to fix anybody or telling them how to a better way of doing it. It's just a bunch of people that have problems, that have pain, that have been through the wars, and are sharing their experience, strength, and hope. No one ever tells anybody what to do. And I laughed earlier when you said when you first walked into an Al-Anon meeting, you were looking, instead of the 10 steps, you were looking for
12.
Or the 12 steps. You were looking for the manual on how to get my kid to not take drugs anymore. And we don't talk about the alcoholic. We talk about you and how you deal with the alcoholic. That's your choice, is how you deal with the alcoholic, how you deal with the problems in your life, the shit sandwiches that come up. You know, how do you deal with it? How have you dealt with it in the past that worked for you? And just the steps. I remember in an old grizzled veteran in AA, he said in an AA meeting, he said, if you want to stay sober, and for me, I want to stay emotionally sober. I want to not drink from this bottle. And he said it's very simple. He said, go to meetings, work the steps. That's what I try to do. I volunteer on the side. I volunteer at a cat rescue place.
Oh, yeah.
I just try and help other people when I can. Sometimes it's simple as holding a door for somebody. Sometimes I try and do random acts of kindness. Just be there for somebody if they need me to be there. But I'm not going to wedge myself into their life and say, you need to do X, Y, and Z. This is how you handle it. It doesn't work that way.
You know, when you guys are doing your 5th step and you're on the columns, you know, the first column, and this is a question because I think I'm curious as to, since it's everything is behavior driven, what the reason we go to Al-Anon is to learn how to react differently, respond instead of reacting to the alcoholic or the person who's creating the
I
unmanageability.
want the pain to stop. That's why we go.
Right. So you want the pain to stop, but it's the onus is on you to do that. So in the fourth step, when you do the columns, and I was wondering how you guys do this, we have the person, the resentment, the cause of the resentment, what it affects, and then there's the other lines that are kind of added to the end of that, which is it affects me, right? There's this line. It says, "What should I have done instead?" And that's a behavior, right? Do you guys use that line?
Some people do.
They call it where they'll either say, "Where was I at fault?" or they'll title it, "What should I have
was
done
my
instead?"
responsibility.
Yeah. So do you guys do it like that? Did you do that?
Absolutely. Part of the things when I started working the steps and got once I realized my character defects and my assets, and I have to say this about working step 4. It was easy for me to list all the character defects. Man, they just flowed. I could write pages on how fucked up I was and how bad I was because I've had a lot of people tell me that in my lifetime, and I believed them. And that was the problem. There were some people, I believed what my mother was telling me when she was hurt and she was going through it, and she was in the perils of her own dysfunction. I believed it when my alcoholic wife told me some things. I believed when my girlfriend was hurting. Hurt people hurt people.
Right.
And so I believed all these things that these people would say about me. And so as a result, my character defects, man, that was easy for me to do. But working on my character assets, that was hard to do. That was like pulling teeth. How do I say I'm a compassionate person? Really? Bullshit.
Yeah.
How do I say that I'm nice to people? I can communicate. I can talk to people. Just some of the things that it's hard for me to talk about my positive side of me. I can talk about the negative side of me all day long. But the negative side of me is what has kept me down. Because I stay in that side, and I need to move towards the positive side. That's what the steps are teaching me to do. Understanding what my role and responsibility is in any one of my resentments is part of the program. Knowing what I could have done better. I can relate it to my ex-girlfriend. I wasn't honest with her. I did not tell her I was hurting. I didn't tell her what I don't think she knows any of the stuff that we've talked about in this podcast. I never asked her what she wanted.
Do you have a regret from that last relationship? So how do you use the steps to get past that regret so that you're not carrying the burden? Like you said, you're one of the things that you were describing was that you have this tendency to take this full responsibility, and in doing that, you've got too much regret going on, it seems like.
The first thing is awareness.
Yeah.
You've got to be aware of the problem of the situation of resentment. And then the second part is hard, acceptance. Accept the fact that I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to do it better. That was, I was who I was. And then the third thing is, what are you going to do now? The action step. And that's the hard part. They're all kind of hard, actually. But the difficult part for me at times is the action part because I get hung up in what I did wrong. And it comes from self-forgiveness. And that's why I like to go to open AA meetings, because I hear the self-forgiveness. I hear people that have stories far worse than mine, that have been to jail, that have gotten out of it, that have a job, that have a life, and are making something of themselves because you didn't get to where you're at right now by beating the shit out of yourself every fucking day.
No, that's like, I think one of the most important aspects of working the steps and having a fellowship around you is because eventually you like learn how to not take yourself too seriously, knowing that through God's grace, God has given you undeserved favor, so to speak, so that you're forgiven for your actions. And you were talking about learning how to forgive ourselves is probably one of the most important parts of the program. I think the first person on the resentment list is yourself. And in that resentment, you go, why am I resentful at myself? And you put all these causes, and like this is one of them too. And then how it affects you. And then what should I do instead? And that becomes our, like, I guess, release valve through working the steps. And the freedom comes from acknowledging that, yes, I had a part in this. And yes, it affected me this way. But now I'm going to, in that fifth column, is that this is what I should have done. So now I live my life in what I should do, not in what happened. Right. So the whole goal that we get, and I think that the power when people say, do all 12 steps, is that in the progression of your recovery, and you will relapse on this, hopefully just on, it's like kind of a weird thing because we relapse, our technical relapse is when you take drink, get high, do whatever, go back to your drug of choice. And then you don't necessarily have to burn your life to the ground, but it does mean that you've lost your sobriety date. And we go back to that though. We don't lose our sobriety date. See, our problems are thinking, right? But the idea behind working the steps, and this is one of those things that, and I look at it every opportunity, like even here on this show, is like we're navigating the life together, right? And in it, we have to kind of learn what the steps mean to each, because how we work the steps, we're looking for the freedom from self, the bondage of self. See, the things that hold us in bondage is self-doubt, is fear, and or regret. Like there's regret and resentments and these things and what shame and all that stuff. So how do I get past that? And the only real way to get past it is to help somebody else get through it, so that we can be a demonstration of how, listen, I was hopeless at one time, and you could still, like even in my 20 years of sobrieties, I will default back to old behaviors and end up hurting people that come in contact with me. It's just the way it goes. That's life sometimes. We don't make the best decisions all the time, but it's...
No, but the difference in between who you are now and who you were is that you're able to recognize, acknowledge the fact that, ooh, I fucked up.
Yeah.
And then what do? You're able to make an amends for it. You're able to say, hey, I made that mistake. I'm sorry. And and for me, there's a huge difference between an amends and an apology. Anybody can say I'm sorry, but not anybody can change the behavior so that it doesn't happen again. That's the hard part.
Right. What is the when I think my big resentment against myself was that I resented the fact that I was more, I guess you could say, concerned with how other people saw me. Like my main focus was always the way other people see me, the way they see my relationship treating me, the way my son performs in life was a reflection on me. And my biggest resentment, was always this idea that I was so consumed with what other people thought of me. And that's what always led me into either being codependent or being depending on other people too much, because it goes one way, it's one way or the other for me. And in either way, it's this transactional relationship that's unhealthy. And now moving forward, how do I get past that? And how do these steps work? And Forgiveness.
I mean, the bottom line for me is forgiving myself for not knowing what I didn't know before I knew it. I didn't know how to be a better person 5 years ago. I didn't know how to be a better version of myself. I didn't know, I was saying earlier, I never asked my girlfriend, what do you want?
Yeah.
And if she told me, I didn't hear it.
Right.
That kills me. What would I do different? But for me, it's about self-forgiveness and not being perfect, and realizing that I'm never going to be perfect. For me, perfectionism leads to paralysis. Well, perfectionism leads to procrastination. Procrastination leads to paralysis. I've always been terrified of making a mistake. I wasn't supposed to be wrong. Because if I made a mistake, I was bad. For me, I wasn't able, I never knew that I could say, I don't know how to do that. Help me with that. The simplest words in the world. I don't know. Can you help me? You walk into an Al-Anon meeting. If somebody says, I need help, man, people are there. And I've never experienced that before. Because I never knew I could ask for help. And more than that, I never knew that I would get the help that I needed. And I don't know why I'm getting so emotional,
Well, I think it's really powerful to be able to be vulnerable and have an experience right now that demonstrates your passion for your recovery. And I think that that's really what's happening right now is that when we relive the experiences of our past and we get to share it with people, what we get is an opportunity, like you said, to bring it out there and really address. And that's why the most important thing about it is like, how do we sew that back up? You know, one of the things when in Al-Anon or any type of trauma therapy, the goal always is to like, you know, express, open it up, but then we have to bring it back together. And how would in Al-Anon, how do we, because there's a lot of feelings in Al-Anon. People have a lot of feelings. Whereas like I said before, in AA, there's a lot of, now people who have recovery, they start getting feelings, right? And, but in the beginning, and even myself, 20 years sober, you know, I struggle to, express feelings in an emotional way. And if I do get to a point where I actually have emotion like that, it's so foreign to me, you know? And so I have a hard time doing what you seem to be able to do naturally. And
this is not come natural at all.
But so an experience, you're having an experience right now by bringing up this, it seems to be tied around your ex-girlfriend's your relationship and what you could have done differently and what you would do differently now. It moving forward, that relationship may or may, you know, I don't know how many years it's been. I forgot what you said, but 3 years. Okay. So 3 years later, you're still experiencing this, you're still working through, and this is the part that's important, is you're working through these emotions and these feelings to this day. And that's important.
It pissed me off this morning because I had a rough morning.
Uh-huh.
And I had realized that I was avoiding.
Yeah. You're avoiding.
I was avoiding some feelings.
Okay.
And because, you know, I know that there are times that the bad feelings come, and it's like I forget what I'm supposed to do with it. I allow them to overcome me, and then I have a decision. What do I want to do with it? Do I want to sit with it? Do I want to isolate with it? What do I want to do?
Right.
And I had a rough morning, and I talked to my sponsor because I had been avoiding my feelings. I was shoving them down. I was trying to pretend as though I was better, that things weren't bothering me, and that I didn't have some pain, that some things that I needed to work through. And it pissed me off because, you know, I wasn't working my program. I wasn't perfect. I made a mistake. I instead of dealing with it, I was avoiding some things.
Mm-hmm.
I was avoiding some feelings, and it's easy to do. You get up in the morning, you feel some pain, you go, ooh, God, I remember something, and that doesn't feel good, and I don't want to deal with it. So you don't find the next shiny object to take your mind off it, but you haven't dealt with it. And that's kind of where I'm at, I think, a lot of times, is I haven't fully dealt with some things that my ex-girlfriend is one of them, and I need to. And it pissed me off because this morning I was like, I thought I was better. I thought I was better farther down the road, and it turned out I wasn't. I was getting stuck, and I was avoiding dealing with the feelings.
Got it. So part of self-compassion and reassurance, right? Would you say that is something that Al-Anon provides for you? So imagine a room full of people that are sharing this kind of experience, because this is really what Al-Anon is a lot about. What type of, I guess you could say, what type of emotional, or what is the self-talk, positive self-talk that you would use to start kind of bringing it back? You know, bring back, let's do some self positive self-talk for Greg right now.
And that's what it comes down to is remembering that, you know, I'm not that person anymore. I have choices. You know, and I acknowledged the fact that that I was feeling some pain. I accepted the fact that there's not a fucking thing I can do about it. It hurts. But then what do you, the big question is now what are you going to do?
Well, so one of the things that I was going to say is like with the fellowship. So the important thing about it's all trauma. Everything that in Al-Anon is based on trauma. It sounds like from the progression of your early childhood all the way up to these relationships is a result of trauma. You talk about it, you bring it out. Now you got open wounds. Al-Anon, so there are people that are out there listening to us right now or going to listen to us or maybe never listen to us, who knows. And the hope is that they do and that we give them something to take home and take to Al-Anon because Al-Anon provides what's called a safe place, right? Al-Anon is a safe place where you're what? You can go in there, express and feel, express your shame, guilt, and have other people support you,
And not
encourage you,
judged
and
on it.
and not be judged on it. And that's important for somebody who's experienced trauma is to go somewhere and not be judged. The next most important thing is that you could say it in Al-Anon. You're not what?
Not alone.
You're not alone. Bingo. Like that's probably one of the most important things. And what else happens in Al-Anon? What happens in Al-Anon? You could say something positive like in Al-Anon, I am, and it starts with the letter H, healing.
I'm recovering.
I'm recovering. See, these are those positive affirmations that we're looking for whenever anybody's out there right now, because a lot of times they feel alone, they're wounded,
Feel hopeless, helpless.
hopeless, helpless, alone, wounded, and they need a place to go to find a sanctuary.
And that's what I found in Al-Anon. It's also what I found in the rooms of AA, in 12-step programs in general. And that's what you find is that you're gonna, and it says, I can't remember what it was in the welcome or the closing, but it's in the closing. Talk to people, reason things out. You'll find that there are people that have had the same problems. People among us have had the same problems as you have. There is hope. There is a way out. And like I said at the very beginning, the reason I tell my story is because the more I tell my story, the less it has hold.
Have you ever practiced like containment exercises? So, okay, so this is something that is used to help close up trauma experiences, people who are experiencing some form of memory that creates feelings like that you're having, right? And it's a practice where the individual who's experienced, so like just take a safe, a vault, like so, and open up that vault, right? And you visualize and you take those painful memories and you place them in the secure container and you lock them up right there for a time being, right? And it's kind of like, reminds me of like, is this me stuffing it down? No, this is putting it in a safe place.
First place I went to.
Yeah, that's what you think about. But here's the thing. So like because what happens is it's kind of like there's this other thing and it's called boundary setting, right? So there's imagery of just like taking your trauma and putting it somewhere because it's with you no matter what. You can't get rid of it, right? It's there. You got to put it in a safe place though. And then boundary setting, affirming to yourself that this is something that I worked on, but I'm not taking it with me. You know, is that something that they ever talk about or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. For me, what I need to move through the pain. I need to experience it because I have pushed things down for so long and haven't dealt with it. That for me, the avoidance part is the part that is the worst.
Right.
And for me, putting it in that safe
Avoidance
is avoiding it. It's not dealing with it and understanding. Okay, because the first thing for me is, and another thing I've learned in meetings is that I cannot control the first thought that I have in the morning. I can't control that.
Yeah.
But I can control what I do with it. And for me, what I'm really trying to focus on now is the action part of the program. This is an action program. It's not a sit on your ass, woe is me program. I need to feel what I feel. I need to deal with it, and then I need to make a good choice for me. And sometimes I need to do something self-care. I need to go to the gym. I need to do something.
Yeah, that's huge. That's called post session self care, a way of like really dealing with it, even just going for a walk, like you said, or you know, talk. You know, I don't know if talking it through. We pretty much talk for hours on the topics, right? Well, not hours, but we're a good time into it. So we can kind of. I want to switch gears a little bit too, really quick. What are some of the fun things that you do in Al-Anon? What if you had to go? Hey, this is like what this is. So, are you experiencing what kind of is the fellowship that you're involved in? Are you guys? Does Al-Anon do events and stuff like that, or what? What do you guys do?
Yeah, they do. AA has events. Al-Anon has events. They have some shared events.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we have golf tournaments.
Okay.
But there might be. I don't know. I don't know of them. What the fun part of Al-Anon?
Yeah, like what
is when you start to learn to laugh at yourself,
Yeah.
not take yourself so seriously. That's part of the recovery.
Right.
There are times that I can laugh at myself, and I catch myself thinking something, and I laugh, and I think, silly son of a bitch, you're doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times that I do that and it hurts. There's sometimes it doesn't. Recovery it's not linear. It's all over the place. So for me anyway.
Right.
I'm learning to make better choices and decisions on what I do with my feelings. And it's been difficult for me because I've had them, but I've never dealt with them. So for me, it's important that I do deal with them.
Yeah. So like in so do you go to any of the like in I think it's coming up here, there'll be the AA convention at the do you ever go to the convention? They have like Al-Anon participation.
They do.
Have you ever been to the powwow in Palm Springs?
Nope.
Have you heard of it? It's not called the powwow anymore. I take that back. It's called the Desert Roundup. They had to change the name because
we get flyers. I hear of it. I've heard of it. Not my thing.
Not your thing? So that social aspect of it outside of the meetings is not something but there must be other people in Al-Anon. There must be something of it because I know that it's a pretty big deal at the Desert Roundup, even at the convention.
Some people, they go to retreats. Some people go.
Yeah. So they have a lot of retreats.
Yeah. There are, we had an Al-Athon or a Christmas thing where we had a meeting and then we had Christmas baskets and there was an auction.
Yeah.
So there are events.
Okay.
Like I said, it's not my thing.
Yeah, got it. All right. That's good then. So what other things you've been doing for like, what do you do for now that you've been in Al-Anon, you're kind of working your way through it. What are some of the exciting things that you do in your life? Are you still just, hey, I'm just kind of doing my thing. That's never been my thing.
Just trying to get my shit back together, just my entire life, trying to figure out what I like, who I am, and what do I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, right.
That's
the story of our life. I'm 59 and I'm still trying to figure that out, what do I want to be when I grow up? Sometimes I have the idea that I'm here. This is what I'm doing right now, talking to these people, talking to you, trying to share experience, strength, and hope so that other people can find a platform or vehicle to go out and help people who are still suffering because there's so many people out there. I think that becomes the ultimate goal when we're trying to figure out what we're doing in life is to suddenly become aware that helping other people is the goal in life. And that when I really look at what God has provided for me, He's provided me a vehicle, a place to go to where people are suffering, and I'm actually equipped to provide at least, if not just an ear, for somebody to share their problems with, but I could share my solutions, what I do to get out of the place that they're in. And then if the quest is, what am I going to do with my life? I'm going to get my shit together. Maybe, and I kind of say this to a lot of people, is there's the two most important days of your life, the day you were born and the day you find out why. See, when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous and I'd been in it for a little bit of I don't know, maybe like 7-8 months or something like that, I realized the impact these other people were having on my life just by showing up to meetings, just by carrying a message, just by meeting with me for coffee, reading the book with me. it was altering the course of my life and the life of my families, my son, my mother, my sister. Everybody was being affected by this program. And I realized suddenly what I'd been missing my whole life was purpose. I wasn't a plumber. It wasn't my job. It wasn't this. And what I found in the 12-step program was a purpose that I didn't even know I wanted. But once I started serving that purpose, meaning helping other people, I didn't have to look around and figure out what I was doing anymore. And when I say, oh yeah, I'm trying to figure it out, I figured it out a long time ago. It's what I'm doing right now. It's what everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous or Al-Anon or any 12-step program who continues to sponsor people, stick around for a long time. They get through the 12 steps so they can get somebody else through the 12 steps. And that's what it really becomes about. And how do we expedite that so that I could start getting the freedom that I really need to have in order to be happy, joyous, and free, right? And to have moved past the regret, the pain, the guilt, the shame, the suffering, and then just never even really bat an eye about it. Just try not to do it again. That becomes the hardest part, right? Is that those feelings, that bottle will resurface at any given time. But the goal for me and for the people that I'm sponsoring is to get you through the steps, to get you a place where you can take action and help other people. And that becomes the purpose. Now, having children, being a family person, being a good employer, employee, whatever the case may be, while that's important and super, that's what you're supposed to do. The same thing with your children and your family is to be a good example and show them, I guess, what is it? What do we try to, we want our life to be an example to our family on how to live life and to be happy and to be successful, not financially, but to be
a good person.
To be a good person. But, we have to achieve that, and if they're looking at us like, hey, you're not there at that place yet. What's going, like, why are you still there? And that's, I think, why the most important thing is getting through the steps, working with another person, and actually getting that freedom that comes from that. Because the freedom doesn't happen until you actually go through all 12 steps, but taking somebody else through the 12 steps, that's where the real freedom comes from. And that's the thing that at least I try to emphasize to people, because we could talk about the problems all day long, right? And which I do, and I love it, when it becomes more about helping people find the solution and implementing that into their life, that's when it really takes on a whole new meaning for me. And I'm no longer thinking about myself anymore. I think that's one of the most important aspects of the program. And I remember when like I told you, I went to the Al-Anon programs and I went to the parent-focused ones. So there's different types of focuses. And it's interesting because even in AA, you'll have meetings that are, about, I don't know, different meetings. There's different, I guess, topics or
different focuses.
Different
Some
focuses.
Are men's meetings, women's meetings.
Yeah. And, but in Al-Anon, they have, it's kind of specific, parent focus, meaning your qualifier is a child.
Yeah, I would have no idea on how to help somebody
in that
environment.
Right.
I've never been down that path. Knock on wood.
Right.
My child is not
I know. Yeah. So, and that takes on a whole nother, there's just a whole nother, I don't even know what the word to use for that is, but it's like an animal, because when you go into a parent focus Al-Anon meeting, it can be really, you want to talk about some heartfelt shares and some scary stuff going on.
I'll bet.
And it's just, I remember thinking to myself, man, I was the kid, I was doing that to my family. And it was really made me feel terrible about myself, and I thought I was going to go there to try. And it was really, and the sad part about it again for me was that I realized that it wasn't, they're not the problem. I was the problem again, that it's the way I reacted. It's what I was doing that was, that I needed to correct my behavior. And it really becomes about my behavior correction one more time.
And that's what Al-Anon focuses on is your responsibility, your role in a given circumstance.
Yeah, it's a crazy paradox. Like you think you're going there to learn how to, like, I don't know,
get my kid to stop drinking,
your kid
or get my husband to stop drinking.
Yeah, and it's not that at all. It's how do you respond and how to teach you not to feel guilt or shame associated with it, because that's generally the reason why you're responding or acting or behaving the way you do. It's associated with your past traumas. And that's a hard thing. That was a hard thing for me to accept. Yeah, that was a tough one, because I thought I had it all figured out. I was sober already like 8 or 9 years or maybe it was 7 years or something like that. It was crazy. But yeah.
I feel for they're called double winners.
Yeah.
The people that are in the AA program but are maybe married to another alcoholic or have a family member. And I feel for them because, they come in and they, as an alcoholic, you're going to hear the damage that's been done from as an alcoholic, and how do you not take that personally?
Look, I put that up there. Like, see that? Check that out. Did you see that? I actually made that for Eddie Music.
What's that?
Greg, watch. It goes like this. Look, there's our guest, Greg L. Thank you for coming in today. We got a quick wrap up, and that was Greg. And I had all these little things. We have this kind of stuff too. Hey, that's Rich Seidel. I'm your host. And remember, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with people, because I really think that I feel like people need to hear the story of the Al-Anon. We are always talking about the story of the alcoholic and the guy who's creating all the pain. There's another thing.
Don't discount the Al-Anons. They can dish out some pain themselves.
Well, 100%. They're part of the problem. I mean, if you really look at it, it's like everybody's got to learn how to take responsibility for their recovery. Look, see, boom.
And that's the thing in Al-Anon is you learn to take responsibility for what's yours.
Yeah.
And deal with that.
Yeah, it's cool. I love 12-step programs. 12-step programs are really cool because it's something that is so. I remember thinking when I originally got to an AA meeting or a 12-step, and I was like, I thought everybody was lame. I was just like the most.
Thought it was a cult.
I mean, it was a cult. It is a cult. I don't care what anybody says. We practiced 12 steps religiously. We had a charismatic leader. We tell other people, if you don't do this, then you're not going to get what we get. So, I mean, as much as we suggest things, we tell that this is what you have to do. In order to be here, you got to have a desire to stop drinking. And so, if it's a cult or not a cult, it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is it's a way of living.
Does it work?
It works, yeah, and it works, and it helps other people change their lives. And so, if you're out there right now watching the show, share, like, subscribe, do whatever it takes, But we want to basically address this again. I think all month long, I'm going to try to look for some more Al-Anon speakers to come onto the show and really kind of share their experience, strength, and hope with us. I think that there's a deeper message here right now. Because family members are suffering and they need to realize that there's a program for them as well as the program for the alcoholic. And when the Al-Anon, when a family member who's got a alcoholic drug addict in their life, when they start practicing a 12-step program, that's going to enhance the relationship building process between the two family members, because now they're both going to have program in their lives. And they'll have a place to go to instead of at each other.
They have a common language.
They have a common language, and they have a common solution for their part, for their frustration and fear. Instead of taking it out on each other, they can have a place to go to, a sponsor, a meeting, and they can pause when agitated instead of lashing out and reacting in an unhealthy way. And that's why I think, and I want to invite, I'm going to have open mic. Let's see, today's Wednesday, right? So I think I'll do open mic tomorrow. So if you know anybody that might want to come in and sit down, you can sit down with them too, because I think that the goal is to hear somebody else's story, and find out what's going on in that, and talk about, just get different perspectives. We do this with, there's, I guess the recovery process is like, you're retired right now, right?
Semi-retired. Yeah.
Semi-retired. So there's people that are younger than you probably that are still going through the challenges of either getting evicted because of their addict, alcoholic husbands or wives' behaviors, right? They're going to watch somebody lose it. Somebody's going to lose a job. Somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to experience all these traumas and tragedies. It's happening right now as we speak. So what we want to do is create a place where people can come to and they can hear stories of recovery on both sides of it, from the alcoholic and the Al-Anon. Kind of like a,
I would say go to a meeting.
yeah,
period.
period. Go to a meeting. So if you're out there, you hear this stories, and you're not the addict, you're not the alcoholic, you're experiencing some feelings of guilt, or and I know this personally. I think a lot of the things that I had done for my son and to my son were out of my personal feelings of having, I guess, I don't know what the word is. I felt that since I wasn't a good father, that I owed it to him to do certain things that enabled him to continue in his alcohol and drug use.
I would say it was out of fear. Fear that he was,
Fear that I would lose him or something.
fear that he's going to die.
Yeah.
Fear
Well, I
that-
was enabling him to do things, that I shouldn't have been able to, because I felt like, I had ruined his life so much, and I'd done, the addict, once he gets sober, he starts, parenting after being in recovery is difficult too, because you've done damage in your family members' lives, so you become more codependent, or I don't know. There's a word. I know somebody will share it with us. So if you know what I'm talking about, comment on it in the thing below, and we'll pick this conversation up. So I just want to say goodbye to everybody. Greg, thank you so much for coming out here. You've been this has just been awesome, and I really feel, like I said, that what Al-Anon is doing for the 12-step community on both sides is super powerful, and I think we need to hear more about that. And so, everybody, that's about all we got for tonight, and I think we'll sign off saying thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Anything you want, last words?
Have a good night.
Have a good night, and we say goodbye. Watch. Oh, Surf City Recovery, Alcohol and Drug Treatment Center. If someone that's our treatment center. And